I think I see the problem. One moment. Now, can you hear me? Testing, testing. If you hear me, let me know in chat, please. It should be working now. I set up a new scene in OBS, and I apparently forgot to copy the mic. Okay, it's working now. Great. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my 7th live stream. As you can see on the screen, I'm experimenting with something new, a new layout. Let's see if we like it. If you have any complaints, if it's hard to read the text, anything like that, let me know. I've also adjusted the sound limiter this time, so hopefully the complaints I had before about it not being loud enough will not be a problem, but let me know if it still is. So any problems at all, let me know. There is a delay, yes. That's because I'm going through a rebroadcast service. There's a little delay anyway, but there's a longer delay because I'm streaming to one service, which is then streaming to both YouTube and to LinkedIn. So that's why there's an even longer delay, an annoyingly long delay. And that's why I will respond to your messages maybe a minute after you send them, assuming I notice them on time. All right, so today, well, actually, before I jump into today, I want to thank everybody for joining today. If this is your first time here, I'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment here or afterwards, contact me. You can find all my contact details at boldlygo.tech. Just show that here for you. Head over there and you can find my email address, my social media, and everything. Love to hear from you. Also, I'd love for you to share this, either this live stream, the replay, or the YouTube channel with your colleagues and friends. I'm almost to 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, so that's kind of cool, I guess. I mean, it's still a small channel, but it'd be fun to get there. I'll probably get there this week, but we'll see. And if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, you're welcome and encouraged to subscribe. If you're watching on LinkedIn, you can find the YouTube channel at youtube.com/@boldlygo. But today, let's talk about what we're actually doing today. I had requests last week to work on actual live coding, and most of the coding I'm doing right now is for a client that I'm not really allowed to share, obviously. It's not open source software. So instead, I'm going to be working on an open source project that I have been building since 2017, I think. It is a database library for Go, for CouchDB. So it's kind of modeled after the standard libraries database/SQL package and that model. But I'm going to be doing a couple things on it today. The first is I want to do a small refactoring. There's a part of the API I don't like. I want to change that. 2 reasons to do that first. The first is that it's just annoying and I want to get it out of the way. I think it'll be simple. And second, I think it will serve as a reasonable sort of entry point into how the package works so that when I work on the feature next, it will hopefully make more sense to the viewers. And that leads to the second thing I want to work on today is adding a new feature. I probably won't finish that today. It's kind of an archaic feature. It's been on my wish list for 2 or 3 years. I'm going to finally work on it today. We probably won't finish, but we'll see where we get. And then we'll either decide to pick it up next week again, or maybe I'll finish it in my off time, depending on the interest. If there's interest to watch me keep working on it, let me know, and I can keep working on that in public. I'm happy to do that. It is open source after all, and all the results are online. So that's my plan for today. If anybody has questions or comments, meanwhile, let me know. Oh, and one other thing I do want to mention, a little housekeeping bit. I would love to review other people's code on this. I have a few videos on my channel where I spend about a half hour reviewing someone's code and just giving my feedback and my thoughts. You know, if this were submitted as part of a job application, what would be my questions to the applicant? If you have some code you would like to have reviewed, maybe you've written it for a job application and you got rejected, or maybe you got accepted but you'd like to improve it, or an open source project, or whatever. Let me know. Send me a link to your maybe a Git link on GitHub or GitLab or wherever you have it, and I can review that probably here on the live stream. Pardon me, and possibly just as a standalone video on my YouTube channel. So, so let's jump in. Let me first explain the refactor I want to do. I think the easiest way to explain that is by showing the Go doc for the package. Maybe I should talk about what the package is first, actually. But let me do that. I suppose the documentation is a reasonable place to start there anyway. But this is the website for the package. Not an exciting website. Just minimal links to the documentation, a little wiki, and bug reports. But it's a database driver, as I mentioned, for CouchDB and PouchDB. If anybody's familiar, there's a good chance you're not familiar with CouchDB. So let me start there. CouchDB is a NoSQL database. If you're familiar with MongoDB, MongoDB is sort of a commercial version of something inspired by CouchDB. So CouchDB has been around for a very long time. It's an Apache project. It's open source. And it had practically zero development for many years. And during that time, some other now popular things, most notably MongoDB, sort of filled in that gap. Since then, CouchDB has been developed a lot more and has had major releases several times in the last 2 or 3 years, so it's under active development again. But I wanted to use this for a project early on when I started learning Go, 5, 7, 8 years ago, something like that. And I have the unusual requirement. If you've watched my other live streams, you may have seen me working on Gopher.js. I wanted to be able to use the same client library if I'm writing my code in standard Go or for Gopher.js. So Kivik, the project I'm going to be working on today, solves that problem. I think very few people, I know of only one other person other than myself who uses the Gopher.js capabilities of Kivik. But it is a fairly popular project. I mean, as far as this sort of library goes, let's see, it has 276 stars, so it's not breaking any records, but I think it's easily the most popular CouchDB driver, or SDK, if you will, for Go. That's what it is. And it has a two-part architecture, the same as database SQL on the standard library. There's the driver component, and then there's the sort of API component or SDK component. And so you can plug in different drivers into the front end part so that you have a common API when you're writing client code that interacts with it. The two most common, the single most common driver is the one for CouchDB. The second one that's an official part of Kivik is the one for PouchDB. PouchDB is a JavaScript library, so it wraps the JavaScript library to make it look like Go code when compiled for Gopher.js. That's an overview of the project. Yeah, I can share a link to my channel. One moment to do that. I'm not sure if I can share that on Slack, or not Slack, but on the chat. I had some problems with that before, and I forgot to investigate that before starting today. Let's see here. For some reason, LinkedIn is telling me that I'm in read-only mode. I don't know what that means or how to fix. I mean, I know what it means. I don't know how to fix that. Let me just put a big link. Let me just share the link here, and I will follow up at the end of the broadcast. And no, zooming in doesn't help there. But that's the link. YouTube.com/@boldlygo is the YouTube channel. I'll put a link on the event afterwards so as well. So I don't know why it's not working. I need to investigate that. I'm still kind of new at this. All right. So the refactor I'm going to do today. So just if you're familiar with the database SQL package in the Go standard library, you're familiar with the fact that many of the functions return. Well, why don't I just look at it to make it obvious? we have this rows type, which is an iterator. Hey, thanks. I've had 2 people share the link. Thank you for doing that. So the rows type is an iterator. You call next on it to get the next row, and then you can read that row, etc. So I have the same pattern in Kivik. Although I call it a result set because rows isn't a really idiomatic concept in CouchDB because it's not tabular data. But you can see the difference here is that this is an interface. It's a rather large, complicated interface. So my intention is to make it no longer be an interface. The reason it's an interface is because I have multiple functions that return a result set, and they have different implementations. And that's going to remain true. However, I don't want to expose the interface to the user of the API. So my refactor is going to be to convert this interface into a concrete struct type. I think that will be fairly simple to do initially with some potentially hairy refactoring afterwards. So I hope that will make sense as we get started. I'm going to jump in and start doing this. I think the simple version will be pretty obvious once we get started. I might surprise myself though. So I haven't checked out already here on my local working copy. And looks like I was working on something else, which I don't care about right now. Let me just check out the master branch and make sure it's up to date. See if there's any unmerged, any merged branches I can delete. There aren't. So I'm going to create a branch. I'm just going to call it rows refactor, I suppose, or result set refactor. And let's open up my editor. Now I already have pretty good test coverage on this library, so it should be really nice when making changes. The test should break and tell me if I do something wrong. I think there's a file called rows that I want to start with. What is it called? Row result set. That's what I want. I think I used to call it rows to match the standard library, and I decided to rename it. And it's probably still stuck in my head that it has that old name. All right, so I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit here because it's hard to see. I have I have like a 13 or 14 inch monitor that I mount next to my camera so that if I can't see it, that probably means you can't see it if you're especially looking on a small screen. So it's also mounted on the wrong side of the camera. I need to swap it so that when I look at the screen, my eyes go in the right direction because right now it looks like I'm looking off screen to you. I know it's not a big deal, but I'll try to fix that for next week if I have time. Anyway, so I'm going to try to pull this up. I really like to keep my tests on one side of the screen and my code on the other. I don't know what tests I'm dealing with yet, so that's a little bit premature, but that's why I like the split screen approach here. All right, so I have this result set. This is what I want to convert into a struct. And I think the simplest way to do that is cheating. But I think it's okay to cheat. I'm going to cheat because I have several things to implement this. Let me just look at that here. Let me see. Go to or find all implementations. So I have. Is it really only 3 things to implement it? That surprises me. I thought I had more than that. It looks like I have 3 things to implement it. This is the main one. So this is if you do most of the queries, I think returns this. It's still called rows internally, but it's unexported, so that's not exposed to the user. Then I have an error one, which is just a way to sort of propagate an error if there's an error doing a query. This is actually pretty easy to understand, I think. You can see it's a struct that has a single field with an error, and all of the methods on that struct return the same error. That's all they do. And then I have this one for row, and this is the special case. So if you query a single document, it returns a result set that has a single document. However, it's this different data type. just called row. And this row implements the result set interface. And I ultimately want to sort of combine these, but I'm gonna do the cheating version first and see how it goes. So the cheating version is going to be to rename this from result set to something else. Doesn't matter what, because it's going to be temporary. So let's just call it result set X for now. Now that's going to touch a bunch of files, I think. Touches 5 files, looks like. I'm going to do add -p, which lets me sort of go through it one at a time. Not because I think I made a mistake, but because I want to review it and see what changes have been made. So here we see, okay, all docs, which is kind of like select star, if you're familiar with SQL, returns the result set. Design docs, which is a unique concept for CouchDB. It's kind of like returning a list of indexes. That's not really accurate, but that's kind of what it's like. Local docs, CouchDB has the concept of multiple servers, and so this just returns the ones on your server rather than on a remote server. Query is how you do an index-based, certain index-based queries. So you can do, select where such and such. Get, this is the one that returns a single document, but it does it as a result set with one document in it. Bulk get is for advanced users. Don't worry about it. Revs diff is used for replication. Don't worry about that. Find is another way to do query index-based query results. Blah blah blah. And then here it's just updating the Go doc for all the things I changed. There's a compile time assertion that my rows type implements result set X. And then, yeah, I think I don't need to explain all of these. Just trying to refresh my own memory. Okay. Now I'm going to create a commit. Temporarily rename result set to result set X during transition. So now that I've done that, now I have freed up that name result set to create a struct, which is exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm essentially at the moment just going to move the Go doc from the old implementation to the new one. The new one doesn't do anything yet, but that's okay. So what I care about here is the Go doc on the main bit. Let me read through it, make sure it still makes sense given the refactor I'm doing. Result set is an iterator over a multi-value query. Result set, yes. All result set. Next. So basically remove these X's from all of these. Oh, I don't need to do that one. That's too far. What happened? Oh, here. My didn't have enough new lines there. Okay, so now I have an empty struct with some Go doc. That's all I have. What I want to do now is define all of these methods on that struct. Now I have to decide. There's a super easy way to do this, and I could call it a day actually, which would be to embed that in it. So now result set embeds result set X, which is an interface, which means that all the methods on the interface behave as methods on the struct. I told you I was cheating, right? Let me commit this. Oh, actually, I should also, I should delete all this, but I will. I'll do that as a second commit. Because now, so I'm quote unquote done. I've done the conversion. I now have a struct in place of the interface. However, now I have this ugly extra interface called result set X that's just sitting around serving a purpose. So I want to eliminate that. Now, I can unexport that. And that would functionally solve my problem. It would no longer be visible. The problem with that is that all of the methods here Now I don't actually know how this would work. I want the methods on the result set struct to have the GoDoc attached to them, and I'm quite certain that would not happen in this case. In fact, I think it would be rather cumbersome for anybody to read the GoDoc and understand what's going on. Line 60 still results at X. Oh, yep, I missed one. Thanks. Let me add that to my last commit. So what I'm going to do instead is one by one take each of these methods and expose them as a direct method on this. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So let's get started. I'm going to copy the GoDoc from here to here. And it needs to return a bool. Now this is going to be a very simple wrapper function at the moment. Typo. Yeah, I'm missing that. So there's the first one. Couldn't be simpler. In fact, you know what? I think I can probably just copy all of this. I'm going to put a big fat comment here as a note to myself where I'm ending. Paste this. And now I'm going to add the boilerplate. What all of these functions do doesn't really matter right now. If anything confuses you and you have a question, feel free to ask, but I'm not really worried about what the functions do right now. I'm just adding the plumbing. Getting close, I think. Hit the wrong key. Restern, that's a nice word. Last one. Okay, I think it should reformat now. Okay, that should be good. Let's run the test to make sure. We should have done that already, but let's do it now. Actually, the test, because I used the IDE to rename everything, the tests are still using the old implementation, not the new one. But that's okay. That's okay. I mean, just still haven't broken anything anyway. So I'm going to add this change. Copy methods from result from old result set interface to use struct. All right. Now, this is going to be the moment of truth. I'm going to unexport this type. So it's still going to be there, but it's no longer exposed as part of the public API. Let's see how many things break. Let me do it. I'm actually a little bit surprised. I kind of expected that one of the tests might be in a different package and not allow that, but apparently that's not the case. So there's only one test file that accesses that, but well, I'm going to see what changed in that file. Not much. Well, let me go ahead and commit these changes. I'm going to do the -p again just to go through and see what's happened. It should be very similar to the first time I did this, though. We're just renaming the same type to something else. Probably isn't actually necessary to do this. That's okay. Actually, you know what? I'm going to undo this because this is going to break the API in a sense. And let me explain what I mean. So now we have these public functions, like all docs, that return an unexported interface. That's not technically unusable, but it's very inconvenient. So I don't want to do that. Even though I know I'm going to fix this before I merge it, I still like to keep my commits as clean as possible. And this is an ugly commit. So I'm going to undo this commit. I'm going to take a different approach. So to review where we are now that I did the reset, I've still added all those methods to this the new struct type. What I'm going to do instead now is I'm going to go to all those public functions those public methods that return that type and have them return the struct type rather than the interface type. So to do that, I want to look at all the references to this. And there's many of those. So here's one. So let's change this to return result. I'll have it return a pointer to result set. Since it's a struct now, using a pointer makes sense. And now we'll see that this is broken, right? So here's the other half of the cheat. So I just wrap the value I was returning, which implements the interface, with that new struct type I've created. So it's ugly, but it's temporary. Now, I'll just mention one thing I could do here. I could do it like this. You notice I left out that result set x colon. There's only one field in that struct, so I could do that. I don't like to do that. If I knew for certain that I would never add other struct fields to this struct, maybe I would do that. Probably not, but maybe. But I intend to refactor this heavily, and I don't want to have to come back and modify every instance of this later. So I'm going to do it, quote, the right way to begin with. Even though it's a fair bit of extra typing. Oops, I have an extra return. Okay, we have an invalid operation. Something is trying to do a type assertion. All right, I have to understand what this test was doing. So this is ugly. It was ugly to begin with. Now it's more ugly. I'm going to do this for now. I don't like this because my test is really tightly coupled to my code right now. It already was. So just to back up and explain what it was doing to begin with. When result set was an interface, as it was just 5 minutes ago, this test assumed that it was, although it was an interface, it was an implementation called star.rows or star rows, which it was when returned by this function. But that means that this test knows that internal detail of the code, which is not ideal. The only reason that matters is because it wants to close a couple of unexported methods, or not methods, but fields. It wants to set them to nil to make a diff better. There are better approaches to this. This is code that I initially wrote many years ago before I knew some of the better approaches. It's kind of ugly. It really needs another refactoring. I'm just adding ugliness on top of ugliness right now because it gets me where I'm going quickly. I can always come back and refactor. I have the tests. I have the safety net of tests, so I can be confident when I do the refactoring, which I'll be doing. But that's why I'm doing that. I don't want anybody to see this and think that I think this is a good idea. This is fairly ugly. But we have one method now switched to return a star result set. Let's run the tests and make sure everything passes. And it doesn't. Haha. Okay, so the reason it doesn't pass is because this test is rather fragile. It's closely tied to the code. So what it's doing here, this is the very test I was just messing with. It's doing a. I think I went too far. Test all docs. Okay. So it takes the return value and does a diff. Basically, it dumps out the data structure and does a diff with what's expected. And I need to update what's expected to match the new wrapped value. That's why it's failing. So here you see it's expecting this. It should be respecting result set X. I have to decide if I want to do any refactoring about the way these tests are designed first. What's wrong? Oh, it's the wrong type, I'll bet. Yeah. Actually, you know, there's an easier way for me to solve it in this case. It's still kind of ugly. But since my expected value is of type star.rows, I can do the conversion here instead. It's kind of ugly. But it should be an easier way to make the test pass. I think it's working. I'm not sure what this post-sleep stuff is. Some debugging output I had left around somewhere. I'll worry about that later. Anyway, the test is passing now. So I think I'll make that one single commit. Convert, what was the name of this one? All docs. All right, there's one down. Let's see what's next. Design docs. This is going to be some monotonous, repetitive stuff here. So I'm going to copy and paste this. Makes it easier to do this. It's really long lines here. It's not fun. But again, this is all temporary. This is a part of refactoring. By the way, anybody interested, this is generally how I do refactoring. At least when I have a vision of where I'm trying to go, I do it in incremental steps, baby steps. Even though sometimes that means adding a bunch of boilerplate that I know I'm going to delete later. I think it's usually safer to do it that way than try to take shortcuts. It also means that at any moment, if I got called away, if this is production code, if I got called away right this exact moment, I could push to production and it wouldn't be a problem. The API might be confusing meanwhile, but it works, right? All right, that one's ready. what's next? Local docs. All right. If this wasn't a live stream, this is the part where I would show a little montage of, Rocky Balboa doing stuff. For the live stream, so you get to listen to me breathe instead. Whoops. This one. All right. Very thing. Another comment on this error RS here. You notice that these functions do not return an error. They only return a struct, or an interface, or now a struct. They have the possibility of returning an error, though. That's what this is. And that's just a way to defer errors. The reason I wanted to do that is so that you could chain calls. So you can do something like query with your parameters dot get, for example, or I can't remember, that's not the right verb, but scan, I think. And then it would return an error. So you can do all your error checking at the end rather than having to do if error equals nil at each step of the way. Makes it easier to chain that. So that's the reason why this doesn't return an error here, but instead some of these cases return this error RS, which contains an error inside. All right, let's run the tests. Another thing to mention about these tests, the test suite I'm running right now is fairly minimal. And it doesn't use any, you can see there's a package here called internal mock. There's no tests in it. It's not really a mock. It has some very minimal test stubs in it. I have a much more extensive test suite that I run in CI that actually connects to a live Postgres instance. Actually, 4 or 5 of them, different versions of it, and runs a very extensive test. I'm not running that for each one of these. That takes a few minutes to run. I will run that test suite before I merge anything, of course. Moving on to get. This is the one that returns a single value, which, by the way, this is the one I'll be adding the new feature to if we get that far today. I'm not sure if we will, come to think of it. I think there's enough. We could spend the whole day refactoring, but we'll see how far we get. Okay, I would expect a test failure, but it's not happening yet. I suppose it's not happening because the test on get doesn't do that type assertion, because it's a different type of test, because it's expecting a single document. So that's kind of nice. That's actually really nice. It means that that proves that this refactor doesn't change the public API, at least for that method. All right. Let me go back here and refresh this list to find the references. We'll have a couple more. Oh, bolt get. I forgot about that one. Can you hear that jet flying overhead? I don't know if that microphone picks that up. Same failure as before. Wrap this thing. Try the tests. Tests are good. Getting close. I think there's just about 3 or 4 left. This is the kind of thing I think AI could be good at helping. I just don't know if, I haven't tried Copilot, but I don't think it's good at this sort of copy and paste stuff yet. I want to tell it, here's the pattern I want to change. Go change that pattern everywhere. All right, something isn't working on this one. Well, because in this case, expected is an interface. Why? Why? I think it could be changed to style those. I think that was just an oversight when I wrote this code before. It's actually only set in one place, I think. And that's here on the success case, and it's pointed to rows, so it should be fine. All right. One here for 5. This might be the last one. I think the other references are not doing assignments. I think they're just where it's referenced. I think that is it. Yeah, that should do it. So now I can rename this to be unexported. So I'm going to look at the local Go doc. Yeah, it's not quite showing up the way I was wanting it to, but that's all right. The point is, it's good enough. You can see here from the Go doc that now all of these methods show up as members of the struct result set, rather than as part of that interface that we saw on the web page before here. So that's exactly what I wanted. So from the point of view of the users of my API, I'm done. I'm done. I think I will actually create a pull request and merge this, and then I'll go back and do the refactoring to clean it up and remove some duplication. let me push that up and create a, let it run through the CI, make sure that the full tests work and so on. Result. Actually, there's a little bit more I want to do first. I want to clean up this Go doc. This is no longer useful. It's on an unexported type, so I can just delete all of this. It's out completely duplicated and extraneous. So I'll just do that as one last change on this PR before I merge. I want to see if there's any place where I left result set X left in the Go doc. So the first result set was good. I think I'm good. Let me push that. Now we can also, you can see all these commits I did. I could have merged at any moment and it would have been functional. At least I hope that was my intention. Let's look at the full diff here and see what it looks like. Everything when it's all considered together. So we can see that we just added a star. As far as the public API, that's the only difference. Internally, there's some other stuff going on, but externally, we just added a star. So I'm just no longer returning an interface, it's returning a pointer to a struct, which is exactly the intention. And then let's scroll down to here. So previously we had type results at interface. Now it's a struct. It contains a single unexported field. So the internals are unknown to the consumer of the API, except for the fact that it has methods on it, and those methods are exposed publicly. They're exported. So I feel like this makes a cleaner API, which is, of course, the reason I wanted to do this. So I'm happy with this. Let's see how the tests are going. Tests are running. We can watch those. So you can see it's running tests against all these different versions of Go, and I'm not actually 100% sure if it's running against live CouchDB right now. I think it is. But when I run the tests for the CouchDB driver, then it does a much even more extensive test. I think it uses 4 or 5 versions of CouchDB against each version of Go, just to be very certain that everything is working well. We're almost done here. Waiting for 2 more tests to finish. Still waiting. What do y'all think about the background I've created? This this Star Trek-ish background. Is it a distraction? Is it cool? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts. Do you prefer the old way where it was just my computer screen and my head in the corner? All right, this is done. Let's merge this thing. My code coverage tests are not happy. I'm not sure why it went down. I don't really give a lot of weight to code coverage. This is mainly just a sanity check. Occasionally I make a pull request and it drops by 20% because I made a mistake or something like that. It says it dropped by 0.77%. I'm not sure how that happened. I'm not really worried. I mean, it does make sense that maybe a couple of different lines are executed differently. I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to merge this thing. All right, next. We're almost halfway through my scheduled 2 hours, and I've accomplished the main goal, but I definitely want to do some cleanups. I think we'll save the feature until next week, but that I think that's fine. We wouldn't really get very far anyway. All right, so I think the first thing I want to do in terms of cleanups here is get rid of that error RS type. Let me find where that was. I can find a reference to it. It was in db.go, I think. At least it was referenced there. Yeah. So there's no longer a need. Whoops, what did I just hit? There's no longer a need to have this separate implementation of the interface, since result set itself could handle it now that it's no longer an interface. So let's find result set was its own file, isn't it? Okay, there's result set. Oh, it's the same file I was already looking at. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an error field to the result set struct. And add some documentation for internal purposes. This is unexported, so this will not be displayed as a part of the public API. This is just documentation for me or any other developers working on the code. So now I need to basically mimic this into each of the individual methods. Should be easy to do. Kind of want it on both sides of my screen, so let me just open up another copy of that. That'll make it easier. All right, here we go. So let's complaining that that's not used, right? Yeah, that's expected. Here we go. First one, if rs dot error does not equal nil, return false. That takes care of this case. I'll just delete that one. Now it's going to complain about everything. Maybe I won't delete it. Well, so now I'm in this dilemma where it's hard to do this incrementally. I kind of need to do it all at once, and I think I will. I don't like that. You know, there's all these different methods. I need to make them all work at the same time, and then delete all references to error rs. Is that necessary? Let me think. I'm not going to delete them here as I go along. Because by adding this here, everything's so as it stands right now. I've added this rs.error blah. It still works 100%. Now, at the moment, none of the instances that create a result set the error. So this is always going to be false and fall back to this case. But even if I had one that set error, it would do the right thing. So whether it goes to this code path or this code path, it does the right thing. So this code is completely safe to merge to production if I wanted to. So I'm going to go this route. And I'm going to do the same thing with next result set. I'm going to see what I do here. I think it's return false. Yes. So if rs.error does not equal nil, return false. I'm just going to do the same thing for each of these methods. Now this one's easy. If rs.error does not equal nil, return rs.error. And then close. If rs.error does not equal nil, return rs.error. You can actually copy and paste this bit to most, maybe all of the remainders. Need to add a nil value here. And then copy paste, paste, paste. Here I need to add an earlier return value of an empty string. Same here. Same here. And this one returns nil, and then the error. Whoops. All right, that should be good enough. Let me do a git add minus p again. Actually, I need to create a branch first, right? What do I call this? This is remove error rs. Sure. So I've added the field. Good. And then for each of the methods, if that field is not nil, I do the appropriate thing. Return false to stop iterating. Return the error. 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 Yeah. Okay. All right, so now I have literally duplicate functionality. Both result set and ERRRS handle the same thing. Now, I could just delete ERRRS and then I'd have a bunch of broken code I have to fix. Instead, I'm going to do it the safe way, as I was describing earlier, and I'm going to go through, just like I did before, on each of the places where ERRRS is used, and have it use the new method. That way, if at any moment I get interrupted and I need to commit while only half of the ERRRS things are fixed, it would still work. It could go to production safely. So let's find all references, and we'll just go through and start replacing. There's a bunch of these. And now you can see why I wanted to type that field name for every one of these, because if I hadn't, as soon as I added that ERR field, I'd have to go back and modify these again. So I don't have to do that. That's great. But this makes it really easy here. I just need to delete this and an extra curly brace. And that's that. So everywhere the ERRRS is used, I can just delete that. And now I'm returning a result set with the error set. That sounds silly, but that's what I mean. I can return the result set with the error field set to the error. And that's exactly what I want. I'm just going to do this same delete operation about 6,000 times now. Refresh that list. A little bit shorter. Has anybody else watching ever done a similar sort of refactoring? And if so, did you take a different approach? Do you like this approach? Do you disagree with it? I'd love to hear what you think. Getting close here. Might be it. Oh, there's two more. As soon as I delete the last one, the linter should complain that this is unused. So that would be a nice indicator. Let's see if this is the last one or not. No, it might not because of this, actually. This makes it look like it's used. I still have a case of it here. Oh, this embeds it. I didn't realize that was a thing. Is that actually used? Okay, I'm going to commit what I have because this is working. Well, let me run the test, but I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. All right, now I need to figure out what's going on with this. This is embedded. If I delete that, what kind of things break? So, in other words, the row struct doesn't fully implement the result set interface without embedding this that does fully implement the result set interface. Which method is it missing? How do I expand this to see the whole thing? Here. Key. So what I'm going to do for now is implement those methods on here, even though they do nothing. I mean, they aren't used on this type, but that's the quickest and safest way for me to eliminate that. Eventually, I want to get rid of those methods I don't care about, but I'm going to do that as a later step. So let me first just implement the method or methods that are not implemented without embedding this. So key was one. Now, the funny thing is here, actually, I'm gonna investigate this a little bit further. I'm not sure if this error RS is ever being set, because if it's not, well, I see we're setting error here. So we are using r.err. So I do need to add, let me just do this. That will address many of them. It addresses the fact that these methods reference that err field that's embedded in the by virtue of being part of this. So now I just need to satisfy the interface that's not satisfied yet, which happens here. So I still need that that key method. Oh, I didn't give it enough current values. That solves that one. What else is missing? Metadata. Okay. data. I don't remember result method data error. Return nil. Still missing something. Next result set. Okay. Scan key. Sometimes for these sort of like filter methods, I like to put them all together. That's wrong. No, I have the wrong braces here. Same with this. Something is still missing. What is it? Scan key has the wrong. Oh. Alright, what's next? Scan value. There we have it. Let's commit that. Tests are passing, that's good. Alright, make the row type full satisfactory interface. Now, there we go. There's that linter warning I was hoping for. ERRRS. Too many R's in that. No longer being used. Now I can see the difference between my master branch and this one. The main difference is that all of these return values are simpler. Less indirection. At the expense of each of these methods now being a tiny bit longer, but it's easy to read, I think. So I think it's an improvement. Let me push that up and make a pull request and probably merge that, assuming the tests all pass. Tests are running. Almost done. Let's take a minute. Did it get hung up on download? There we go. Job succeeded. All right. Merge that thing. Curious what the test coverage shows here. Might have gone up this time since I added new lines that are being executed. Although I also deleted a few lines that were being executed, so it might be a flush. Might. If I think about it, I'll check back once it's updated. All right. So I just had to create a bunch of methods here that aren't needed. So my next step is I want to eliminate the need for that. And I need to think about how I want to do that. I think the best way, well, I don't know about the best way. The quickest way is to replace this result set X with two interfaces. One that's mandatory and one that's optional. Let me think about it. Do I really want to do that? I think I do. Yeah. So I'm going to rename this now to something a little more descriptive. Let's call this base. No, actually, you know what? I have. I have to think about the different cases. So that these are actually those are useful. Yeah. Okay. I can always rename again later. Renaming is easy. I'm going to call this basic result set. No, I'm going to call this one extended result set. Full result set. How about that? Then I'm going to create. Let me commit that. I'm going to create a branch called basic result set because that's the goal I'm aiming for, is to segregate this to segregate my existing result set into a basic and an extended or full result set. Another rename of the same type, the third one today. And then I'm going to create a basic result set. And full result set is going to embed it. So let me move this up. I think it's easier to read if I put the simpler one at the top. And then all the functions that are, all the methods that are required for the basic one, I'll just move them up there. So that's next, error, and close. What was the one I had? Was it? Scroll in here. ID and rev. I don't think finish is actually used anymore. I think that's obsolete. I'll delete that in a minute. Attachments, I guess. I may end up with more than two eventually, but for the moment I'm going to just do two. Scan doc. That's the main one that almost everybody uses all the time. I think this should accomplish it. And then what I want to do, so let me make that a commit. Now what I want to do is make this the type that is used here. Now, okay, there's a funny thing here. This doesn't need to be embedded anymore. I'm not using it as though it's embedded. So I'm going to do something confusing. And I'm not embedding anymore, right? But this way I'm not renaming the field. But you'll notice that a bunch of things broke. And that's because some of the methods on the new result set struct are now trying to reference methods that are not on that that type there. So we have to handle that. So let's do it right here. Let's do let's just do full. Okay, column equals rs.full result set. I'm going to rename this full result set field to probably just result set eventually. But for now, I'm going to stick with what it is. I hope it makes sense what I just did there. So I have. Let me back up a little bit and explain what's going on. If anybody's not super familiar with how these interfaces work and go, this could be useful. So this full result set, like okay, I'm actually going to back up. I think I'm doing too many things at once, even for my own sake. So I'm actually going to rename. So this is embedded right now, which means that the field name is the same as the type name. I'm going to unembed it without changing anything else. So now the field name and type name are identical, but it's no longer embedded. Let's make that a command. Functionally identical now because we're not depending on the fact that it's embedded. Now I can rename this to something a little less obtuse. Let's just call it result set. I'll call it underlying. Calling it result set seems a little confusing because that's the name of the struct also. I think I'll call it underlying. And maybe I'll think of a better name later, but for now that's a reasonable name, I think. I'm going to touch all these pieces of code. I'm not going to look at all of them. All right, now when I change this to basic result set, it's not nearly as confusing to have a field called full result set that is of type basic result set. So now, back to what I was about to explain. When we have this code over here, let's just go to one of the examples. Close this, we have a little bit more room on the screen. Oh, I'm still using IOUtil. I have to fix that. So, where is it? Result set. So here, I set underlying to this value, right? Now this value we know is still of type full result set. It has all the methods on it because we don't have any implementations yet that don't have all the methods on it. But we're assigning it to a field of type basic result set. Now that's okay because you can assign a larger interface to a type with a smaller interface and it's still valid by definition, right? But now we have, back to this code, I'll redo what I just did a moment ago. Now on this code we have the problem that we're trying to call a method that doesn't exist on the basic result set. But we know that the value stored in that basic result set field is actually of type full result set, or at least it may be. Right now we know it is, in the future it may be. So we have to do a type assertion. So we do a type assertion of rs.underlying to full result set. And if it's okay, then we know we can call that method because it's on there. And if it's not okay, then we have to do something else. In this case, we just return false. So what next result set does is you can actually have a query that returns more than one result set. The one case where we only do the basic result set, at least at the moment, is when you return a single document. And when you return a single document, obviously there's not more than one result set. So it's okay to just return false there. So that's what this now does. Let's look at the next failure here. Metadata. So if we have one that has no metadata, what do we do? First, let's do the same type assertion. So if we have the full result set, that means the metadata method is defined on it. We can just call it. Otherwise, we have to do something else. And I think the appropriate thing is to... Actually, I don't know what the appropriate thing to do is here. I have to think about this. So it's not an error. We've already handled the error case here. So we know there's no error. Man, what should we do if there's no metadata? I suppose we should return... We should either return an error that says there's no metadata, or return empty metadata. And I think the old implementation would have crashed, actually, because it would have, or return nil nil. I never thought about this. I never ran into this, partly because the old interface was kind of hard to think about. Didn't make this obvious. So I think... I'm not sure what the appropriate thing to do here is. I have to think about this. Let me look at that data type again. Whoops. So this is only useful information so it's returning like pagination offsets is what it's returning basically, or update sequence. These are things that are only valid on result sets. I think I don't think it's wrong to return an empty result set metadata value. I think I'll do that for now. Well, I may come back and change this at some point, but for now, that's what I was going to do. So if you end up calling for metadata when you're only getting a single document, you'll just get 0 values back. But that seems better than sending nil, which might crash if you tried to dereference it. And returning an error might be the right thing, but I have to think about that. So this is what I'm going to do for the moment. Let's move on to the next one. If full, OK equals rs.underlying dot full result set. OK. Then we return full dot scan value dest. Otherwise, we can just return nil here, because that means there's no. If the result set doesn't implement the scan value method, that means there is no value to scan. So it would do the same thing as nil. Scan value just works the same way as it does on database SQL. Scan key is the same concept, except for a different part of the data. So by the same logic, I can just return nil here when it's not a full result set. We have one more here, which is key. And in this case, we can just return the empty string and error because there is no key, and nil because there is no key and there is no error. Okay, I think we're done there. Let's run the tests. Good. So now we allow setting this result set dot underlying to a basic result set, but we aren't doing that yet. So let's make that change, which was in the rows file, or row rather. So where is that right? No, it was in DB. I think it was DB get. Yeah, so this one. Okay, so all I need to do now is remove those extra methods from the row. Struct, all these ones I just created, I think I can delete those. This should be basic, just basic, this should be good. So now I can delete these, and everything should be fine. Awesome. Can't spell. Unneeded methods on the row type. All right, I think I can merge that. There's still probably a lot of room for deduplication, but I think I already feel a lot better about what I've done, and it doesn't feel too ugly. Those tests, some of those tests are still kind of ugly and could be improved. That's kind of a, it's not really related to this change. It touches on this change, touches it, but it's not really the core problem. So I'll probably do that a different day. All right, let this thing, these tests run here. Well, I wanted to check out the code coverage on that last one that I just merged. I'll do that while I'm waiting. Never published. Oh well, I don't really care. Let's take it a minute. I run my tests on GitLab. I actually like GitLab a lot better than GitHub. I used to like it a lot more. I've been using GitLab since before GitHub Actions even existed. But even so, I still like GitLab's integration more than, and they're sort of scripting better than GitHub Actions. So I run my CI for this project on GitLab, even though it's hosted on GitHub. But sometimes those webhooks take a minute or two to kick off, and that's what we're waiting for right now. While we're waiting for that, let me look through my code here and see what ideas I might have for further refactoring. Well, this finish thing, I'm pretty sure that's not being used anywhere. I can just delete that. That I had a previous implementation where that meant something, but I'm quite certain it doesn't anymore. Let me see if finish is referenced anywhere else. Nope. I'll just add that to the same PR. So the test finally kicked off, but then I pushed a new change and I had to wait for it to kick off again. So I was going to look for some refactoring suggestions. So let me do that now. I don't know. I think I'm actually quite happy with what I have already. Let me check the Go doc, see if it's updated yet. It probably hasn't because it should update once it's requested. But I can at least kick that off. Oh, it is updated. It already shows that it is a struct. Awesome. Yeah, I like this a lot better. I like it a lot better. Some of these links aren't working right. I think it needs to reference. Yeah, let me update that while I'm here. So this is the scan value doc. Brackets around that. Yeah, it needs to reference the type also, and it doesn't do that. Yeah, so this needs to say result set dot next or result set dot close. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'm pointing out that these brackets around here aren't links, and they should be, just like they are here or here. I want them to be links to the referencing functions. So I need to add the proper qualifier, I guess. That is just put the type dot function name or method name. Let me just browse through the rest of these, see if I missed others. Calling blah, 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 blah. Yeah, those all look like links. This one, link. Well, there's one that's not. That's on close. There was a couple missing there. Where's close defined? Here. This needs to be result set. Whoops. Result set dot. And result set dot. Now I need to wrap this just because I'm a little bit picky about that sort of thing. We'll need to add brackets entirely here. Result set dot. By the way, if you're wondering, it's absolutely not important to reindent like I am. The website is smart enough to wrap things correctly for HTML. It removes all the preceding slash and everything. I'm just doing it because that way. All right, any others? Just did that one. I think this is the one I just fixed, right? Yep. Here's another one. This is on key. And next is missing one. That's near the top here. I think that's it. Did I do that one? No, I did not. String key also. Looks like I missed more of them than I got correct the first time anyway. Next or close is on scan value. I did. All right, I think that's good enough. I'm sure I missed others. I'll fix those later. You don't need to watch me fix all those. Now before I push this and re-trigger the test, let's see if the current test is passed. They're still running, which is fine. And code coverage has gone up slightly this time, apparently, even though the patch is only 50% covered, but whatever, I don't really care about that. Almost done. Except that I just triggered them again, I think. You know what, I'm just going to live wild, hit that merge button even though the tests haven't run because I'm certain that they're fine. All right, I feel really good about that. This will take a while to update those links. Probably an hour or something, I don't know. I think this is probably a good stopping point. There's 20 minutes left on the scheduled time, but I don't really have any other refactoring to do that's obvious, and there's not enough time to start on a new feature. I will give a preview of the feature I have in mind, though. So we've been talking a little bit about this get function that returns a result set that contains a single document. Why would I bother returning a result set rather than a single document? Well, I didn't used to, But there is actually one circumstance, if you pass the right options to get on CouchDB, it will return multiple versions of the same document, which looks a lot like a result set. The current driver for CouchDB does not yet support that capability, but I want to make it support that capability. So that's the feature I'll be adding. I'm pretty sure I have an open ticket for that. Yes, right here. No, that's the wrong one. That's another good one to add, though. Maybe it's on the main repo. We keep the different drivers in separate repos, which I think was a mistake. So I intend to merge those all into the main repo again. But for now, I have things spread around, which is why I'm not quite sure where this thing is. Come on. Don't be so slow. Why is this so slow? GitHub down again? It likes to do that frequently, doesn't it? There, that loaded quickly. That's it right there. So that's the last piece right there. So this was actually a large project because the API, the public API, my initial API in version 3 of Kivik doesn't have get returning result set. It has it returning. Oh, this one has it returning. Oh, that's the wrong method. That's why. Yeah, it has it returning a single row, which is a very different API. But so I wanted to make it return a result set rather than a single row. But I didn't want to make it too cumbersome. I didn't want to make you have to iterate over a single item. So I spent a long time thinking about how to do that. The new API allows you to do that, but now I just need to add that capability to have the get method optionally return multiple versions of the same document. So that's the feature I will be working on probably next week, unless somebody submits some code to be reviewed or some other great, brilliant idea comes up. That's the feature I'll be working on adding next week. Yeah, so thanks for watching. I'm not sure if anybody's still watching. Maybe you're catching the replay. There was a little bit of tedium in today's coding, as is the nature of some of these things. But anyway, thanks for watching. I did have some a number of people on here, and I appreciate that. Hope to see you next week. Until then, make it go.